Hello everyone, this is FIDE Master Viktor Neustroyev. Today we start our webinar. We are going to talk about Grandmasters Mistakes. So I prepared several games for us to analyze. Maybe we won't analyze the game fully, just a fragment where these mistakes were made. We will try to guess what was the nature of these mistakes and how to avoid such situations happening in your games. Of course, I cannot teach you such a skill which allows you to avoid all mistakes in your game, but at least knowing some of most typical mistakes will help you. However, this time, instead of talking about mistakes of ordinary club players, we are going to talk about grandmasters mistakes. So that's why such an event will be definitely more helpful for strong players. But anyway, so I'm sure you'll find this interesting and definitely um, helpful. So this webinar will be quite helpful. Okay, can you please tell me whether the sound and the video quality is good? So today I'm using a green screen behind me. Why? Because I didn't have time to change the decoration, and after doing this webinar later today, I'm going to work on my newest course on Chessable. So that's why I kept it. Okay, fine. So yeah, yes, keep your microphones muted. If you want to say something, yes, you're welcome. As for your camera, well, you can keep it on if you want. However, it's not required. Okay, so those of you who participate in this webinar, in our weekly webinars for the first time, could you please introduce yourself a little, saying, for example, which country you are joining us from and what's your current ELO? It can be chess.com rating or FIDE or USCF, any. Okay, fine. Okay, so Kumar's rating is 1500 on chess.com. Okay, perfect. So let's start. Well, first of all, you should understand that all chess players, even the strongest, make mistakes. So if you remember such a quote, once Garry Kasparov said that he feels a kind of nostalgia to that times where he was playing against Karpov. They were doing a lot of mistakes, but no one was able to criticize them because there were no computers. So, well, nowadays we know there is engine, and even the basic version of the engine can defeat a grandmaster. So that's why we know there are mistakes, but at the same time, only like huge mistakes. I mean, such moves that change the evaluation of the position significantly can be considered as mistakes. For example, those that the engine thinks are inaccuracies are quite natural, and well, the human player thinks in a slightly different way, and it's common that the human player makes a move which he feels and understands is a better move. He definitely may miss some long lines, and yeah, he may miscalculate. So anyway, so if a player plays a natural move according to his understanding, and this move doesn't make his position much worse, then I think it shouldn't be considered as a mistake, maybe just a small inaccuracy, which is completely fine. Okay, let's start. I'm sure you see the screen. So what kind of mistakes we are going to observe? Of course, miscalculations, a wrong assessment of the position too, a loss of a concentration, and so on. These mistakes are very critical when the game is very when yeah, when the game costs a lot. For example, if it's a world championship match and well, you're leading or instead you're losing and you have to win to equalize the score. However, it doesn't mean that mistakes are usually made under the pressure, under psychological pressure. Very often, such mistakes are made because of well, the reasons that we cannot explain. For example, if a chess player in a good position creates problems on his own. Why? How does it happen? It happens at club players level very often. So I always say that once you have a material advantage, try to realize this advantage. So, for example, recently I was doing a class with my student Natalia. I wrote about her in my blog. So she is one of the, well, she is a lawyer, and I think 3 years ago, she defeated everyone in a chess tournament between lawyers. And this time she was playing the game on chess.com. She got extra knight. And instead of just convert this extra knight in the end game, she had two rooks and the knight, while her opponent had only two rooks. She decided to start the attack, sacrifice the knight, and then, unfortunately, with two rooks, she was unable to checkmate. So, well, how is it possible to come up with the plan to attack when you have just fewer pieces and the enemy king is not compromised? So that was definitely her mistake. Instead of doing this, she'd better try to exchange the rooks, try to attack the enemy pawns which were weak, and try to focus on her own pawns and create pass pawns. So, well, there is no point of doing an attack on the enemy king if you have just fewer pieces on the board. But if you have extra material, the simplest way is just to convert this material advantage by simplifying and creating pass pawns. Okay, so, well, even in a simple position, such unforced mistakes are common, but in a more complex position, it's much easier to make a mistake. Um, so, for example, you have to calculate the lines to the very end. We will see some examples where one of the grandmasters made such a mistake. Also, when you're playing for material, when you're trying to gain the material, you should understand that these actions that you take place in order, for example, um, to gain the material on one side may lead to a counterplay on the other side for your opponent, and that can be a problem. And of course, there are positional mistakes when a chess player makes a wrong decision about a certain exchange or about a certain maneuver. Well, what can be the reason of the mistake? So I said sometimes there is no reason, and a chess player just plays what he thinks is better, but makes a mistake, and later looking at this game realizes that, wow, why did that play so well? It was so obvious. I could just take this pawn, create a pass pawn, and avoid complications. Sometimes it's a pressure of a responsibility, maybe some psychological factors. Uh, well, anyway, so let's analyze and let's try to avoid mistakes in our games. I'm talking about the mistakes that grandmasters made. We are going to analyze and avoid them in our games. That's the goal for today. So let's start. First, the game between Karakin and Kramnik. Uh, so today I prepared two games of Sergei Karakin, and in both games he took advantage of the black's mistake. So c6, well, it's a possible way to play against London, but actually it's not London yet, because later there is a possibility of c4. So from the typical London setup, Karakin transposes to Queen's Gambit. Knight bd7, knight c3, e6, and this is where white plays queen b3. So what's your opinion? How black should play in this position? Both players did know the theory in this position. However, Kramnik chose a wrong move order. So who knows how to play here? So I'm waiting for your suggestions, guys. If you remember, then it's perfect. If you don't, just suggest the move. Okay, so I put it here. Okay. So bishop takes f3 is one candidate move, knight h5 is the other candidate move. Anything else? Okay, so, well, bishop takes f3 does make sense. Okay, b6 to protect the pawn. Well, b6 does make sense, but actually, according to the theory, the best move is knight h5. There is no need to take on f3 right away. Well, it provides white with the attack through the g file, and well, the bishop is too valuable. Maybe later, in order to ruin the pawn structure, you can do it. But right now, there is no purpose. What else? Doing b6, well, yes, but you can actually sacrifice this pawn. Then that's why b6 here looks like inaccuracy. For example, c takes d5, then if e takes d5, they can just simply play bishop a6 and you experience issues here. So how do you defend the b7 square and then c6? Well, you can take with the c pawn instead, but then it's knight b5 and knight a7. So knight b5 threatening the fork. Black defends but loses the pawn on a7. So no, definitely not b6. Maybe queen b6 does make sense with the, but then c5. Well, it's playable. This position is playable. However, knight h5 is theory. And how does the game continue here? So they do not capture on b7 here, because if queen b7, it's knight f4, pawn takes f4, rook b8, the queen takes the other pawn. Well, b2 is always vulnerable. It's possible to take it right away, but there is a better continuation. Bishop takes f3. So this time, such a move makes a lot of sense because we triple the pawns. And bishop b4 with pressure here. For example, c takes d5, otherwise this move traps the rook. So c takes d5, rook b6, I mean, this move traps the queen. So c takes d5, rook b6, queen c4, e takes d5, now what? They take, and in this position, bishop c3, pawn takes c3, and queen c7. Black has several pawns down, but with a strong initiative. So after this castle, the king is in a danger in the center as well as on the g file. So this position is quite risky. If you want to look at what the engine says, it says black is better. It's -1. However, black is how many? 3 pawns down, actually. So queen b7 doesn't work after knight h5. What else works? Bishop e5, for example, bishop f3, now queen b7. But again, looks like just knight e5, d takes e5, and with d4, black protects on c6. So g takes, d takes, queen c6, and after king e7, the white's maximum is a draw with a repetition. So bishop g3 is a natural move here. And this is where d takes c4 should be played. Queen b7 doesn't work this time because knight takes g3 and then rook b8. Because there is no bishop, then rook b8 becomes playable. So queen e7, rook b2, and then bishop b4 coming. So white should be in the trouble. That's why after knight h5, bishop g3 and d takes c4, white just captures on c4, bishop e7, and this is approximately equal position for both. So this is the theory. What did Vladimir Kramnik do? He took on c4 right away. Probably he forgot the exact move order and played this quickly. Probably he wanted to confuse white, having in mind that there is it's the same. So yeah, it's possible to take with the bishop actually here. So it's possible to take with the queen or with the bishop, but if you take with the bishop, it's b5. This is what you should keep in mind. And then later they can consider c5 or b4 c5 or a6 and c5. So that's why taking with the queen stops it. There was even a game in this position. Yeah, according to what I see. Okay, fine. So this is the theory, but no, wait a sec. So d takes c4 was played, and in this position, Karakin took on b7. He calculated the line properly and took on b7. And this time there is no rook b8 because this knight is still on f6. And if you play knight h5 right away, which later Kramnik saw, what do you think happens? So I'm waiting for your suggestion. Yeah, Paul, can you please send me a direct message instead of posting it in the chat? So bishop c7, right. So bishop c7 forces the queen to move, and then queen takes c6. That's right. So again, guys, when you suggest a certain move, can you please, if you're doing it in a Zoom, please send me a direct message instead of posting it in the chat. But yeah, that's right. Bishop c7, and you take another pawn, and they do not take the bishop. So then after queen b7, Kramnik realized it and took on f3 first, g takes f3, and decided to play knight d5. So for example, if this, then he has a very nice position with a pawn chain, and if not, then he takes on f4. But bishop g3. How to play then? He continued with this move to support the pawn on c4. Queen takes c6. Bishop b4. But unfortunately, the game is already lost. So white is much, much better and converts his material advantage. So the pawn on c4 dies at a certain moment. Well, already white is a pawn up. If the pawn dies on c4, then two pawns up. So queen b5, queen e7, a3, bishop takes, pawn takes, castle, bishop c4, knight c4, queen c4. So there is nothing to talk about. Two extra pawns for white. Well, if you want to see how the game continued, I'll quickly show you. But there was nothing specific. White has to defend their weaknesses, and then they have to initiate a counterplay. So everything is defended with queen b1. Now some consolidation and entering the enemy camp. So now if c3 is captured, then a6 is lost. Knight goes there, queen a6 anyway. And, well, by the way, here, for example, queen b5, what happens if knight to h4? What would you play? What was the purpose of queen b5? This is quite a sneaky move. Knight h4 is a check. How would you react? Wait a sec. Knight h4 is a check. You cannot play rook d7 to attack the queen. King h1, and if they continue with this move, knight takes f3. Queen h5, maybe with the idea of taking on f7, right? So, but then knight g5, so you probably play f4. They can play g6, g6. Okay, so yeah, there are some very nice suggestions. Gopal Singh suggests to capture on h4, but can you please explain what happens then? Okay, let's discuss this line. So knight h4 is a check. That's why there is no rook d7. Then what? King h1. Okay, maybe taking on f3 isn't a good idea because of queen h5, which is a double attack. Originally, I wanted to do something like that, but then it seems I just lose on f7. Well, maybe it still works. Queen f7, king h8. Ah, the rook is not hanging, so simply king g2 doesn't work too because I can play knight h4. So this is quite playable actually because I'm threatening to take the rook with a check. Okay, maybe instead I cannot take on f3 but continue with something simple like g6. Ah, but this time rook d7 exists. But there is rook d7 a big problem? Yes, it seems it is. Okay, so let me play something else. Maybe I can just do... Oh, I can just do queen f6 with some ideas of capturing there, hoping for... Yeah, queen f6, so this, and then I exchange the queens and gain another pawn, for example. Well, then black has some chances. Because c3 is a weakness, knight is going to jump and do this. So yeah, probably chances, the black's chances to draw the game are much higher. Okay, what else? The key idea of this move is that after this and this, it's possible to play rook h1. The queen has to retreat. f4, f6, d8, doesn't matter. But the next move is this, which is a double attack. I'm saying it's double attack because queen h6 fails because of queen f7. King f8 cannot escape neither. No checks can be delivered. So that's the end. Okay, maybe this move is better, but then it's still this g6. Okay, then what? No, the simplest is queen h7, queen h8, exchange the rooks and simply win this rook and game. Yeah, so this, then they take. I take king g7, then take there, rook takes, and just rook b3, bringing the king to d3, and then advancing the pawns. Okay, it's completely winning. 3 extra pawns. So knight h4 doesn't work. Instead, e5 was played. e5, now let's protect. So rook goes there. Rook takes c3, d takes e5. So they sacrifice the pawn here, but got the one here. Knight goes to f8. Queen d5, pressuring this pawn, queen e8. Well, exchanging the queens was possible, but then this pawn is dangerous. So protecting on a3. Finally, the queens are exchanged, and step by step, white won that game. So rook b5 and so on. Ah, this is a critical, there is a critical moment here. So rook f7, rook g6, rook a7, this. So, and g5 was played with the idea of doing h6. Always the idea of doing g6 and then rook b8 and rook h8. So g6 would still work, but then you can get in this situation where if you take, they can stalemate the game with this, because if you take, it's a stalemate. But if you move the king, then this happens. And then king g5. But it's still winning because you can do queen f3. Okay. So anyway, white successfully realized their advantage. Fine. Just because of the wrong move order, so probably Kramnik either forgot the line or he wanted to confuse Karakin with a weird move order. Now the second example, also taken from the game of Sergei Karakin. This time he was playing against Peter Swidler. Roy Lopez and d5. So who can tell me the name of this exact opening? How this variation is called? No, it's not Berlin. So instead of a6, if knight f6 is played, and then either castle or d3. Well, d3 is anti-Berlin, castle is... Oh, this is Berlin. This is a Berlin endgame, for example. So, but this is not. Archangel variation. What does it mean? I mean, so there is there is a variation named after the town in Russia, which is called Arkhangelsk. But no, it's not this. Come on, guys. This is probably one of the famous lines of Ruy Lopez. I even have a webinar. Yeah, okay. Those who do not play Ruy Lopez probably are not familiar, but I had a webinar regarding this opening, and those of you who prefer playing Ruy Lopez with black pieces can definitely play this variation. It's called martial attack or martial counter attack. For example, well, in English it sounds martial attack, but Russian and some other chess players from um, West Europe said martial counterattack. Why counterattack? Because when black attacks, it's still a counterattack because usually white attacks. So that's why it's a counterattack rather than attack. Anyway, so at the cost of a pawn, black has a very nice attack. So knight takes d5, knight takes e5, this, rook takes, and c6, supporting the knight, and the idea is to do this stuff. So people typically play this move, bishop d6, then rook goes back, queen h4, and there are two moves that can help to defend against the checkmate. However, one of them is actually a losing move. So what would you play, h3 or g3? I don't count f4 because it's just a pawn blunder. So h3 or g3, which one would you choose? Okay, so waiting for your suggestions. Do not forget to use direct messages instead, of just posting it in the chat for everyone. Okay, so here I see that, well, rook e5 is not considered to be enough. At some moments of this game, yes, rook e5 is the only way to save, but actually it's g3. Why not h3? Who knows why not h3? Because bishop takes, yes. Because bishop takes, and this is a winning position. So g takes h3, queen takes h3, and this is where probably rook e5 has to be played. But after bishop e5, d takes e5, it's a rook for two minor pieces, for two bishops even. But the white pieces are not developed yet. So, for example, rook e8 and rook e6 and so on. Or rook e5 even. So that's why h3 loses the game. But g3 continues the game. So it starts with queen h3. Then this is the plan. So that's why in this position after, well, it happens like that. Bishop g4, queen d3. In case of this move, it's queen f1. So here, for example, rook a8 is the main move, and the game continues, and black has a very strong attack at the cost of just one pawn only. That's why, instead of doing d4, here chess players started playing d3. It's not as popular as d4, but there is a different theory there. So bishop d6, Rook goes to e1, and instead of doing this attack, bishop f5. Well, queen h4 is still playable here. But then g3, and after queen h3 move, this time it's possible to play this with the idea of rook h4 as well. It stops this move. Okay, fine. So bishop f5, queen goes there, rook e8, the rooks are exchanged and the back rank becomes weak. Knight d2, there is a check here, but the knight blocks. This bishop is hanging, that's why it retreats. And here I must admit that it was a World Cup, and Swidler was leading by 2 points in that match. What he needed to do, just one draw, and then he qualifies further, while Karakin goes home. So you suggest bishop d5? Not sure about this move. Because let's say bishop d5, c takes d5, queen d5, and then I play this. What did you prepare? Because at the very worst scenario, I play bishop c7 and do bishop d3. But of course, my main threat is this, bishop h2. So probably you have to react with this. Then I would capture there, you would capture there. And after bishop f8, I think you lose some pawns, and then the position becomes equal. So bishop d5 actually does make sense, but only equalizes the position. Anyway, white here played bishop not to d5, but to c2, because they wanted to defend d3. And bishop c2, which is actually very natural move for most of the positions of in Ruy Lopez. But this time it is a mistake. So why did he play such a mistake? Karakin. Okay, we will try to answer this question later, but can you please tell me why bishop to c2 is a mistake? Is it because of bishop f4 or because of anything else? Well, so it's even a blunder. And there is a chance for black to take advantage of this blunder right away and win the game or get a winning position. Okay, Brian, can you please specify why you like such a move? Yeah, I see. Black bishop to f4, I see. And Brian, I also see your move, but I don't want to say it because it's... Paul, did you mean f5? No, it's bishop f4, okay. No, guys, it's not bishop f4. So if you play bishop f4, queen d1. And if the queen moves away, I just take on f4. I'm fine with it. If you take there, okay, I take. And your maximum here is to capture there. But it seems that the position is equal. For example, take this, bishop f3, and you have to somehow save it. Knight e2 check is completely useless. Now my rook can move. So white seems to be okay here. So it's not bishop f4. Okay, so here Brian and John, so I am also reading comments on chess.com or on YouTube, I mean, suggested knight c3. Absolutely correct. So for those of you who are not familiar with Ruy Lopez, knight c3 seems like a logical tactical strike. How does it work? Well, first of all, we are threatening with this. For example, if they take on c6, it leads to a checkmate. Second, they have to take, it seems. So, and then we take there, now these two pieces are attacked, the rook and the bishop. So, for example, bishop g5, if you take the rook, you can get into trouble after queen c6 because rook d8 cannot be played in order to defend the bishop because there is a bishop on g5. But if after bishop g5 you first continue with h6, then it works. How does it work? For example, well, d4, you can exchange there and take here. And this is a winning position because of one extra pawn and better pawn structure. But what's wrong with this? So here, queen e1, queen c6, rook f8, queen d6, and what can we do in this position? Okay, so here we can play this move with the idea of entering the enemy camp, which becomes possible once we create an escape square for the king. So there is no back rank weakness. We're threatening with rook c2, and we're also threatening to play rook c1. After which they have no ideas how to defend the knight. That's why this is a winning position for black. Okay, so knight c3 would work perfectly well. Swidler, a very strong grandmaster, his rating that time was 27-27, so probably he was in top 50 at that moment. But he didn't notice it. Why? Well, I think I can answer why. Because bishop c2 is natural for Ruy Lopez, and that's why they decided to rely on their previous experience. So, well, bishop c2 is common for this position. That's why such a move cannot be bad. That was the reason why black didn't analyze knight c3. But look at this position. Bishop c2 is quite natural move in Ruy Lopez when there is a pawn on a4, when the white queen is here, and definitely the black queen is not in the white's camp. But here the situation is completely different. That's why you shouldn't rely on the general concepts of the opening that you learned. Instead, you should play a concrete position like you see it for the first time. So knight c3. And, well, Swidler didn't take it. That was his mistake. Instead, he played b4. So the game continued. c4, chasing the knight away. b3 with the idea of knight b4. Bishop goes to d1. Knight b4 anyway. Bishop d2. Double attack. But the knight is protected, of course. Queen e5. The queen is not threatening with a mate. There is a knight here. Bishop c3 with a temper to protect the pawn here. And bishop b4 right away. And then just bishop takes b3. Queen goes here. Rook e1, bishop c5. They are adding pressure on f2. Well, white is better, and probably they should just defend the position with rook a2, the b2 and f2. But they played bishop a4, which in their mind meant that queen takes on c6, and it simplifies the position a lot, but not. Rook d8, attacking on d3. Now, rook d1 was played, so why not queen c6? Well, because of this. Why not bishop c6? Because of, no, this is, yeah, is this playable? No, I think not. Probably it's bishop h5 to chase the queen away and capture on f2. So, for example, queen takes, bishop takes here and here. If, let's say, they keep the queen protecting f2, then it's simply queen takes c6. So rook d1 was played. It's fine. Queen b2. Bishop takes c6, and this is where black plays a very serious mistake. But then white makes a mistake. So here black plays bishop h5. Well, instead they could just do what? What do you think? What's the best move for black here? Who can find it? And then we will discuss what's wrong with bishop h5. So queen e2 is natural. Well, yes, it is, but I'm not sure if it's the best move. What else? Bishop e4. Okay, and if bishop takes e4? No, bishop e4 is clearly a mistake. Ah, bishop e4, d takes e4. It's still a mistake. So bishop e4 is still a mistake. So bishop f, well, let me show you. Ah, you mean, okay, black should play. No, bishop e4, bishop e4. There is nothing to discuss. But let's say I just play a random move. Bishop e4 for white is already a mistake because after this and queen takes, it's queen f2 and queen g1 mate. If the pawn takes, then rook takes rook, and after queen takes, it's still the same story. So the best move was actually just to queen e5. What's the purpose of queen e5? No, the best move is to take here. Then what? If rook takes, bishop takes, and the queen cannot take. And then we have 4 pawns versus 5, but black has a bishop pair. And c4 is vulnerable, and f2 is vulnerable. And also it's possible to take or just simply add pressure. So this is where black would have some chances. So for example, this move we're taking here, and there is no queen b1 or something like that, the bishop should retreat back. And well, then it's probably a draw, mainly because this bishop is stronger than this knight. But bishop h5 was played. Well, the idea of this move was quite logical. If queen takes, it's queen f2. Can you guess a move for white here? Okay, so actually not guess the move, but suggest the best move for white here. Well, okay, so Brian suggests queen f5. Bishop d1 then, and you are rook down. Paraful suggests g4, and if bishop g4, doesn't it mean that the queen is still distracted from f2 and white loses after queen takes f2? Any other suggestions? Rook d2. Well, okay, you're very close. In the game, it was rook b1, but it was a mistake. As for this move, I still think it's a mistake. But let's define why. Okay, so I think rook d2 is a mistake, at least because of bishop takes f3, rook takes b2, and this, where black has extra bishop and d3 is a weakness. It's likely to die, after which black is completely winning. Okay, so the answer is actually g4. g4 is the best move. And yes, it does help to avoid a checkmate because here after queen f2, king goes to h1 and the g1 square is covered. So this is what both players missed. Black when they played bishop h5 and white when in this position they decided to play rook b1. Well, again, this seems to be the most natural way to play. However, here Swidler decides to take on b1, which is still fine. Queen takes h5, bishop f2, right? So attracting the king and then capturing this. Queen c6. So black is completely winning with extra exchange and only one pawn is a compensation. Okay, so there is a question from John. Let me let's discuss. So what happens after rook takes d3? Well, rook takes d3, bishop takes, bishop d5, bishop g6. So this is what happens. It's approximately equal position. Or you mean what happens where? So bishop h5, rook here, and rook d3 in this position. No, I don't think it does make sense to play like that. So rook b2. No, it doesn't make sense. This. After bishop h5, okay. So bishop h5, rook b1. Okay. G4 and rook d3 here. Okay, fine. Interesting. I didn't analyze it, but I don't think it works. What about rook d3? Bishop g4, rook d8, bishop f8, and now f2 is not hanging. Okay. So rook b1 was played. Oops, rook b1 was played. Queen b1. This is what happened. Black is winning, but somehow black managed to lose. So white wanted to initiate some kind of an attack here and here. I don't know why, but maybe he was already low on time. He plays this move and simply blunders the rook. This is how white won. So who can answer why Swidler made so many mistakes? Well, he was definitely stronger than Karakin, but still lost the game. I have some ideas. I think that there was a psychological pressure because he was leading and he didn't want to lose. That's why he was trying to play as solid as possible, avoiding competitive lines where he would definitely be better, but he wasn't sure about the continuation of these lines. And instead of, well, choosing these suggestions that he would choose, if, for example, if the score was 0-0, here he wanted to like play solid chess. This is a very common mistakes of chess players who are playing against lower rated players. So when you think that, well, yeah, I'm good, he is not good. His rating is 400 points lower than mine. So what does it mean? It means that he makes a mistake. So I should just play ordinary and solid moves and wait for his mistake. Well, no, this is not how it works. Instead, you should be playing like you're playing against a person who has a same rating. You should calculate the lines properly, and if you think that you calculated the line properly and you have advantage, trust yourself. Go into this line and take advantage of and realize your advantage. Okay, fine. So let's continue. And now we come up to the second part of our exercise. We're gonna observe this game, and then from a certain moment, I suggest to play it in the form of a rapid game on chess.com. I also prepared the homework for you, but if we then have time left, we will analyze other mistakes that I also prepared. There are three more games to talk about. Okay, so Vishay Anand playing against Boris Gelfand. Well, F3, kind of a early version of Samish variation of King's Indian. Well, C5. C5 is the best weapon against Samish, actually. D5, D6, E4, and it transposed to Samish, but with the pawn on D5. Bishop E2, oh, knight E2, I mean, then this knight goes there, knight H5. So G4 should be played here. It is a must. However, instead, Anand plays bishop G5 move. Maybe it was his home preparation. What would you play for black in this position? I cannot say that bishop G5 is actually a mistake. Well, just a small inaccuracy or just an ordinary human move that had some home preparation behind. So just f6 makes this bishop bad, as well as do not allows the knight to retreat back to f6 when it's needed. Well, h6 makes more sense, but let's say bishop e3, and then when I play queen d2, I will gain a tempo. Okay, so I'm sure that Brian, who is a well-known King's Indian player, answers this question properly. No, it's not a5. And not queen e8. So what's the task in King's Indian? Which plan black tries to initiate? Well, e5 here is a blunder. I agree. b5 is interesting, but then c takes b5, so you can play a6. Well, this is what deserves attention, but it's not the best move. Yes, okay, so thanks, John, it's f5. So because the key idea is to attack on the flank, and here, because these pieces are not developed, the king is exposed, it makes sense to open the position with f5, because this king is definitely safer. So what would continue then? Well, I don't know. Maybe they would take, and then we can take with the pawn. We can take with the bishop, but then it's g4, and we have to keep an eye on it. But you can capture with a rook. Attack this, so queen d2, and then move the rook back or play queen b6. Anyway, the position becomes open, and black would have more chances to take advantage of their bishop pair. Not pair, but of their active bishops. So is it a Benoni pawn structure? No, it's not. This and this, if these pawns are removed, the c and the e, then it's Benoni. Well, bishop f6 was played, which is also a mistake, but I think that it was a Gelfand's reaction to Annan's home preparation. Okay, bishop f6, e takes f6, queen d2, and f5. So he basically does the same thing, the same plan, but here I have a question. After e takes e5, don't you think that he loses a piece? Or does he want to take with the g-pawn? But taking with the g-pawn is definitely a mistake. He exposes the king, ruining his pawn structure. So does in this position black loses a piece? Okay, when queen h4? This time queen h4, queen f2. And if you deliver a check, I'm completely fine with it. Or you mean bishop f5, g4, queen h4 here, but I think it's still the same. You can play this, bishop e2, and then one. Paul, do you want to say anything? Or can I mute you? Okay, I can mute you. If you want to unmute, just let me know. Bishop e2, queen g5. Yeah, queen g5 works. because in case if g takes f5, there is queen c1 with the idea of taking this rook. So actually queen h4 would work. But queen h4 would work. Wait a sec. No, wait. Here, queen f2, rook e8, this. And if knight d2, there is still a fork. What do you think? How black has to play in this situation? In order to avoid material losses, black has to play knight f4. Thanks, John. Well, not bishop d3. Bishop d3, just g takes h5. Wait, bishop g4 loses the material, but still playable. How is it playable? You want to take on g4 with the queen? Okay, I can just castle. I don't think it's playable. Bishop for 2 pawns. No, it's completely lost. Okay, so after knight d2, thanks to John, we know that knight f4 works. So how does it work? Black moves their knight away from the attack and threatens with a fork. So if g takes a5, it's simply a fork on d3 because the bishop on a2 is pinned. That's why actually, instead of blocking with the queen here, king d1 is a better move. Then it can be bishop takes here, rook takes, and the knight escapes. For example, to g7, queen e1, queens are exchanged, and this position looks fine for white. So black avoided material losses, and it's playable, but white is better. So queen h4 helps. Also, bishop b1 would help too, right away, then the knight moves. But in the game, it was rook e8 played. If bishop e2, it's queen h4. Probably this is what Gelfand had in mind. That's why king goes to d1. Bishop b1, rook b1. And black plays queen f6, gaining a tempo on f3. And this is the position that we're gonna play. So I can send you the picture. So I want you to think what you're gonna do here as white. So what move? Think about this. And those of you who wants to play against me, tell me your usernames. By the way, so before we start, if you want to support my webinars, you can use this link and donate. I would appreciate it, and it helps me uh, to prepare the content for my webinars. I'm not doing it alone, so I'm working with a Russian FIDE master who helps me. So it's really easy to donate. You click the button, enter the amount you want to donate, and then it redirects to PayPal once you click this button. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna play the game. I'm going to the place section, and well, here, custom. 15 plus 10, then this. Put it here. I'm going to play with black pieces. So who wants to play? Okay, everything is set properly according to what I see. So those of you who want to play, you can also use this link. But remember to make the moves within 1 minute. The first few moves should be played within 1 minute. Okay, bishop e2. Fine. So white decided to defend on f3. Okay. Well, now I need to save the knight. It's definitely hanging, so I go there. Knight f4. Knight e4. Well, this is a good move. I can just bring my queen to e5. Let me see if I have anything better. No, not yet. Queen e5. Okay, and I'm going to start a new challenge. So 15 plus. Uh, no, it's not this. And play with black. So it's the challenge is sent. Here, king c2. Yeah, king c2 definitely makes sense. Okay. So the game will abort. Okay, take. Then I take here. Okay, king c2 with the idea of playing rook e1, I think. Let me play knight d7. King c1. Then I take. So who else wants to play? Use the link or tell me your username. Oh, maybe John wants. Oh, okay. Okay, so king c2. What do I need to do? Let me escape with the queen. Or maybe I can play something better than this because I don't see. No, there is. Okay, let me escape here. Yeah, new game. Oops. Cancel. Okay, rook e1 here. Uh-huh. So I want to play b5 here. C takes. D5. Okay, let's try it. Looks interesting. Maybe I am mistaken. Okay, so here custom plus 10. So yeah, who wants to play? Either use the link that is in the chat or tell me your username. John, I am challenged you. Please accept it. Interesting. King c2 right away. Okay, I can take on f3, but then it's probably bishop g2. Okay, let me play knight f4. Rook e1 in this position. So I can take, but it doesn't make much sense. This. So let me just play knight a6 or knight d7. What is better? Okay, knight d7. Or maybe knight d6 was better, actually. b3. Let me go there. Bishop e2. Queen e5. Okay, let me think. So bishop d3, I can take the bishop either now or... Yeah, let me take it now. Okay, bishop d3 attacking my queen. So queen takes h5. And then knight d7. So are there any discovered attacks with this knight? Let me capture first. Knight goes to e4. So this and these are weak. But I can play f5, can I? Yeah, let's play f5. And if knight d6, I can take there. Yeah, let's play f5. This move. Yeah, this is what I was expecting. What I can do now. Oh, well, take and play rook to b8. Okay, this move. Knight e4. Okay, queen f4. And then I wanted to play rook a b8. Knight d6, I take on e1. I hope I didn't miss anything. Rook f1. Interesting. Didn't expect it. So everything seems to be protected. Queen c3 gonna be played. I want to play f5, but I don't want complications to my king. What about b5 here? So let's say they take. Okay, what about knight e5? Queen c3. And if I play knight f3, it's knight f6. Maybe it's not. No, it is a problem. It is a problem. So what can I do? Knight e5, queen c3. Oh, yeah, and then I have knight g4. Yeah, knight g4 works. Queen e1, queen h2 check. Knight goes to c3. Well, I did expect this move. However, here I need to decide whether this is a good idea or not. Queen d4, c takes d4. How does it help? Then I can push the pawn to d3, which is good actually. So most likely it will be queen takes, pawn takes, knight b5 right away, which is a double attack. Can push d3, but how good is it? What else do I have? Okay, let me think. Rook b. Oh no, the queen is hanging, of course. So just retreat with the queen. And how do I continue then? Oh, let's just retreat with the queen. Okay, this move and they take the knight. That was the goal. Queen d2. Okay, that's right. But actually, it's a good move because now I cannot move my queen. I have to take. Queen f6. No. Queen a3. Okay. Okay, I have to take. g5. No. Okay, I have to take. Then the knight takes. Yeah. Knight d4 is still coming. So, okay, f5. Okay, let me play b5 here. Actually, rook e8 was a better move. Okay, g takes. So rook e4, my knight is under attack. I have no other option but to take. b5, queen takes d5, rook g1 check, king f7. Pawn takes. Rook b4, queen takes. Okay, so it's a completely winning position if I exchange the queens. King here. So the pawn is hanging. How can I deal with it? Only with this move. Well, this is a winning position. I don't think we need to discuss it. Yeah, rook goes there. This is what I expected, but I prepared g5. Oh, okay. Yeah, the pawn is a weakness and rook h6 is coming here too. So what can I do? I can play this move at least. Or I have to play rook a7, and after this I have to block with my knight, which I don't want, but maybe it's still a good idea. Rook g8, rook h7, rook goes to g2 and b3. Yeah, I don't want to give up the pawn. King g6 is another option. Then the rook goes to h3. I can play h5, rook g1, king h6, rook g3. Okay, let's just play rook e7. Okay, this. Yeah, expected. So rook c4 right now doesn't work because then h takes. C3, no. Okay, h6. Rook f2, defending the second rank. That's clever. So b5 right now doesn't make much sense. So let me just enter the enemy camp. Okay, let's take here. Take with the pawn. I take. Okay, so those who want to play, just tell me your username. I will challenge you. King c3. Rook g1. So there is no purpose for playing until a checkmate. So what? You want to check whether I'm able to deliver a checkmate or not? King c2. So what? Well, this is already a kind of an achievement. How else I can play to get my other pieces? I can play this move, rook a1. Rook a1, a3, let's say. Another thing I can do is knight g6, which I think I like more than what? Well, f4. Oh, rook a1. Does rook a1 make sense? So now f4 means knight here. Okay, let's first try a6. So in this game I won. Well, okay, but why? It's well, it was a losing position, but maybe it was not obvious. Okay, in this game I win too. There is only one game left with parallax, and this is probably the most complicated game. So a6, I want to play b5 because I don't know how exactly here white may continue. Okay, this move. And if I play this, is it b3? Yeah, probably it's b3. Okay, let's do it anyway. Also, king g6, rook h4, rook h3. So the rook has a few squares still. Check. Okay, this is where I have to block because I don't want to lose the pawn on d6. If I move the king, I lose it. If I block with my rook, it does make sense. Then what? Rook takes. Pawn takes. Why not? Yeah, very nice position. What else? If knight takes, then the rook is vulnerable. But then maybe he plays this move. Okay, let me block with my rook. I think it's more promising. Rook goes there. Well, it's clever. So I have this move, very funny move. I attack with the king, but it seems to be a good move because I doubt that f4 is played. I think rook h3. But then f4 is a threat. So I can bring the... No, it doesn't work, of course. Okay, so what can I do here is king g5, rook h3, and knight c4. Because then f4 doesn't work. But I don't think it's promising. Knight takes, pawn takes, king c3. I lose this pawn. Rook f4. Yeah, let me think. So b takes, knight takes. Okay, so let me double the rooks at least. So I can invade the enemy camp on g1 or on g2. No, but I cannot use my second rook to block. But this time I can retreat with the king to e7 and protect on d6 after this check. However, f4 and knight g4, actually f4, I can also do this. f4, knight g4, rook goes to e2. How do I continue then? Okay. So you guys actually missed a very... Okay, c takes b5. Yes, I expected this. Okay, a takes b5, and now f4 probably. But then d5 is a weakness. And I don't want to overload the g file. So, okay, so well, I didn't expect it. And what about my king here? No, I cannot take this pawn then. If I play this move, it's knight c4, right? No. All right. But it shouldn't work. If I take on a4, okay, then rook a4. That's clever. Okay, what else I have? Well, actually, I can take, then what? Rook takes. Then rook g2 works. Okay, let me take. I think it's the simplest because I don't want to enter these complications with a takes b5, b6, and so on. Okay. So what do I want to do in this position? Well, I want to do rook g2. I think it's quite obvious. So the concept is that once I play this move, well, rook takes, it's a check or it's a pin. In case if, for example, rook a4, I do this, white has to take, otherwise the knight is pinned. Okay, rook a2, but I still can do the same move, rook a2, rook g2, I mean. Rook takes, I take. Mhm. So yeah, rook, I think the rook has to take. I don't think that this check deserves any attention. If this check is played, how do I block? King e7? Or king f7? King f7. Yeah, king f7, right. Not king a7, but f7. Oh, okay, so on my next webinar, we are going to play from a different position. So if you want, you can come to the webinar next Sunday, and then I'll challenge you. Okay, rook takes rook. I think it was inaccuracy. It was better to include this intermediate check. King moves. Or maybe I'm mistaken actually. Maybe it was still good. Well, a3 doesn't make much sense. Knight f3. Rook d2. Yeah, rook d2 is the move I prepared. Rook d2, rook h6. King g7. Rook takes d6. And knight f3 at least. Yeah, rook d2 should work. Because when the rook attacks me, I can still attack this rook with king g7 or king g5. What is better, actually? The king g5 is better. Rook h7. Well, I think it's a losing position. Let me deliver an intermediate check. And then I take on d5. And this is completely losing. So I'm a knight up. There is only one passed pawn that white may try to promote. It's the h pawn, but no, it doesn't look promising. No, actually, I think it's over. White loses here. Well, white has a chance only if somehow white exchanges this 3 for my 4, because rook and knight versus rook is considered to be a draw. Okay, f4. Knight g6. Defend. Knight takes. No, well, it's a losing position. I don't think we need to continue. Let's say knight h5 just. And then I just take here. F4. F2. Yeah, F2 works. Rook F4. And knight G3 is the next move. Okay. Thank you for the game. Let's move on and continue what you should actually play. Let me share the screen and I'll show you. So here we are. So guys, none of you realize that actually this knight is I mean, it's poisoned. White cannot, no, I mean, it's not poisoned. The pawn is poisoned instead. So g takes h5 was the best move. Queen takes f3. The king escapes to c2. And after queen h1, the queen is trapped. All white needs is just to play a proper move, which is queen f2 in this position. Bishop d3, and there is no defense. Well, there is a defense, it's a rook sacrifice. But if it's a rook sacrifice, then white is already a piece up in a winning position. So this is where Gelfand resigned. And his mistake was actually queen f6. Having in mind that this pawn is under attack, and this is how he wins a pawn, but he didn't calculate the line to the very end and didn't realize that his queen can get trapped after queen f2. Instead, of course, he'd better play knight f6, and his position is slightly worse only. So king c2, for example, bishop d3, and the kingside attack. Okay, so I prepared some homework for you. I can also paste it in the chat, but we will continue. So those of you who want to play the game against me, we can play next Sunday. But again, we're going to play from a certain position. So the homework is sent in the chat, but let's continue. We have some more time for today. And I would like to show you the fragment from the game where Boris Spassky was playing against Bobby Fischer. So this, just b5 was played recently. If you remember, bishop h2 was played. Well, from a human point of view, bishop h2 is obviously a mistake, right? Because when then the bishop is trapped. But actually, here both players have to calculate the lines. So g3, h5, king e2, h4. So if g takes h4, the bishop escapes. But king f3. And now, well, king e7 is probably the best move. After king g2, the bishop is trapped. H takes, f takes, and he had to sacrifice the bishop. Well, from this moment, it's obvious that if black has some chances, they are just very low, and white is definitely playing for a win, because two pawns do not compensate the bishop. So that's why with this move, bishop takes h2, the maximum that Bobby Fischer could have is a draw. But if, let's say, he plays king e7 here or plays a6 in this position, it gonna be the approximately equivalent game, right? So 5 versus 5, or the bishops of the same color. Well, it's completely fine. Well, instead, bishop h2, and this is what happened. They lost, well, and then the rest is just a technique. Here, Spassky did his best. However, it's still possible for black to draw the game. Well, not here. For king h4, it's already won. Maybe he would better play e5 in this position. So again, he can draw the game, but probably with the only moves like that, then g6, then maybe he tries to exchange. So bishop h2 was obviously a mistake. Okay, the next example. The next example happened in the game between Topalov and Kasparov. This time Kasparov made a mistake. So Najdorf, f4. This is okay. So is there a rule that you have to write down the move after making it? Yes. After you make the move, you should write it down. This is a rule. Well, this works for standard time controls. Okay, knight c6. So yeah, well, let me move the game to the critical moment. So this is where this pawn was sacrificed. White took it. And here black could have some counterplay if they played knight d4, breaking the connection between these two pieces. Probably e5 or bishop a3, bishop a3 to, oops, sorry. Bishop a3 to stop castling. Bishop a3, then the game would continue with h5, some counterplay on the king side, or just e5, then queen b2, queen takes d4, take here, king d2, and white pieces are more active. And it seems that because two pieces are under the attack simultaneously, the best option is this, king takes, and the knight moves. After that, the position is materially equal. e5 is a weakness, actually, but king d4 can be played. So that was the best move for Gary, but it seems that it will simplify the position a lot. Instead, he plays knight g4, which is definitely a blunder. Why? I think at that moment he was more relying on his tactical skills. I mean, he thought that he gets enough initiative here for the piece, but the line doesn't work. So bishop g4, queen b2. And now, what do you think was the best move for white? So here, Topalov already makes a mistake. What was his mistake? Any suggestions, guys? Okay, so here the main mistake is that actually the rook can be sacrificed. Instead of just doing rook b1, which doesn't make sense because there is a knight hanging on c3, so simply queen takes c3. Instead of that, it was possible to protect this knight and let them capture the queen, because after king f2, the queen is trapped. For example, rook b1 in this position, because after bishop c3, it's knight c3, and there is no way to save the queen. If, let's say, in this position, they take on c3 right away, which could make some sense, it's still not enough to compensate. For example, well, they can capture here, but after bishop e6, f7 is vulnerable. So just move the king and threaten with this. Well, rook d7 probably, but e5, and white seems to be winning. So knight g2 would work, but instead he plays e5. Here, I think that these mistakes are mainly played because the position is too complicated for both. And well, it's just a miscalculation when they cannot keep in mind a lot of lines in a sharp position, because almost every move here requires an accurate calculation. Okay, so this is what I wanted you to show in this game, but and I have also one more. Karpov was playing against Kasparov. Now, this is quite an old game. So what? It's Queen's Gambit. The position is equal here. And let me show you the most critical moment. So rook d2. Then he goes there. 96. So, okay, the question for you, how to play? Queen takes e6 or pawn takes e6? Who can tell me? There is a huge difference. So first of all, it seems that if queen e6, this pawn is a weakness, right? And bishop f3. bishop f3, so the pawn is lost. But actually, this can be the endgame with the bishops of opposite color, where one extra pawn doesn't decide the game. So, for example, queen takes, bishop takes. Well, there is a problem with this, but it was still possible to hold the game. For example, rook d8, rook d1, then rook c d7. And well, if the queen goes to the attack, well, maybe d4 will be played at a certain moment. So even if they lose this pawn, it's still fine. But f takes e6 was played instead. And the disadvantage of this move is that now there are too many light squares weakened into the enemy camp. Okay, so here, what about h3? h3, rook d8, bishop g4, I can just move the queen. Okay, so after f takes e6, there are so many light squares weakened and bishop g4 is played. So, and black is under a long-term, slow positional attack. So that was a positional mistake. Instead, they'd better defend the weakness and save the game. But they wanted to avoid the problem with the isolated pawn on d5. However, it resulted in other problems. So rook c4, h3 defending it. Queen c6 to exchange pieces. Queen d3, king h8. So, and later you'll see what happened. So bishop comes there. If the move order, if the order is the queen first and then the bishop behind, it's a checkmate on h7. This is what white is trying to achieve. So b4, queen g4. If queen g6, it's over. But queen e8. What now? Well, bishop g6 and bishop back probably was a good idea, but Karpov plays e4, which is still fine. Bishop g5, rook c2, the rooks are exchanged. Queen goes here, attacking queen e2. Now this and this. Queen c5 attacking here, because the idea is to take, queen takes, and bishop e3. So rook f1 is a must. Queen c3, it seems that black developed some initiative, but after that, it's still not enough. So bishop b1, queen d2 to offer an exchange, but queen e5. Queen f5 now. Well, why did they have to play this move? But which move to play, actually? So bishop f4, for example, queen d6 and queen g6 then. Oh, no, not queen d6. But queen d6, queen g6 is a threat. So bishop here, then queen e7, I think. So rook d8, queen e5. King escapes. And then the attack starts. So threatening with a checkmate. The king goes there. They repeated the position, and now the bishop comes with the idea of doing queen g6, bishop e6 with the checkmate on f7. So this is where white is already winning. Queen g6, king g8, bishop e6. King has to go there, because if it goes to f8, it's a checkmate that Gary prepared. So he goes there, bishop f5 repetition, and then he plays g3 as a prophylaxis. Now the king goes there. Well, g3 threatens with f4 and as well as h4. Doing something like queen f6 wouldn't make much sense. So here, and then rook e1, and rook e6 is coming. So king f8, king g2, queen f6 finally was played, and h4. That was the reason of g3, chasing the bishop away. So now queen h8 will attack the rook on d8. Bishop c3, rook d3. The rook may move here. Well, they could keep defending their position with this move, but unfortunately, rook d6 was played. So being under attack for so long period is likely to lead to a mistake, and rook d6 is a mistake. Rook f3, threatening with a discovered attack like bishop e6, or bishop g6 actually. King e7, queen h8, trying to attack from the other side. And just a small inaccuracy, queen c8. He goes there and queen c5. So now there is no checkmate, but the pawns can be captured. Moreover, white still tries to create a mating net. Queen b7 check, but rook a4 is a counter check. King goes there, another check, and bishop h7 with the idea of this. So, well, how to play? It seems that there is a queen sacrifice, but then the position is losing. The only other way I see is rook f7, not queen f7, because queen f7, queen c8, or even queen c5. So that's why this move. But then queen c5 wins the game, right? So rook e7. How does it win the game, by the way? Okay, it wins the game with queen d6, with queen d8 idea. So queen goes there, queen b8 still, king f7, then there should be a checkmate. So queen f8, they have to block, and now queen c5, threatening with this. So rook goes back, but rook f4, and it's over. So this, it's bishop f5 at least. Actually, bishop f g8, queen f5. Yeah, bishop g8 leads to a huge material win, as well as bishop f5. So, well, Karpov didn't play it. He played a different move. He played queen e6, which is still a winning move. Queen d7, well, it's not a mistake because the only other move is a queen sacrifice. So queen d7, and after queen e5, he simply resigned because the queen cannot protect these two squares. I mean, yes, it can, but if so, the queen allows the white queen to check from c5. For example, queen here, queen c5, and it's winning. So how it is winning? Like that. Then bishop g6, let's say, with rook f4 on the next, well, not rook f4, but we are threatening here to capture and then play queen c8. This is how it works. Okay, so this is how the game ended. Of course, maybe even after f takes e6, it's still possible to hold the position, but it's more likely that white wins because of this long-term attack. Okay, anyway, so let's finish our webinar for today. So next webinar will be interactive too. So see you next Sunday. If you have any questions, you can message me at tricksofchess@gmail.com. Bye-bye.